All right, we're recording. Go ahead, Kristen, get us started if you don't mind.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me back. My name is Kristen Arute. I am President and Program Director for Hingham Cares. Our mission is to reduce and prevent youth substance use within our community. In the past, we've been a federally funded coalition and have done work collaborating with the schools. We've brought programming into the community. We have resources on our website. And so our goal is to prevent youth from going down the road of experiencing a substance use or alcohol use disorder.
Thank you. And then Lori, why don't you go next?
You're muted, Lori. Can she hear us? Oh.
All right, there we go. Hi, sorry about that. I'm Lori McCarthy. I'm the executive director and one of the partners at Herren Wellness Center. We are a residential wellness program that treats substance use disorder and any kind of like emotional distress, not severe mental health, but somewhere in the, in the beginning of that. We do a lot of work with young adults that have marijuana addiction. Also gambling, some sports betting now has come in to our program, and anybody that's really struggling. We are a pretty full service program. We have a huge family program, a big alumni program, and yeah, it's quite small, 24 beds, and then we have 2 step-down sober living programs right in the neighborhood. So I've been doing this work for over 20 years. I'm a licensed alcohol and drug counselor and interventionist, and raised my kids, grew up in Hingham, raised my kids in Hingham, and live in Hingham. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Lori. And then last but certainly not least, Dr. Kerensky.
Hi, everybody. Todd Kerensky. I'm the Medical Director of Addiction Services at South Shore Health, and I co-chair our Ethics Advisory Committee. We have a full range of addiction treatment services here at South Shore Health, and I oversee those and do direct patient care as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So Amanda, I don't know if there's a specific question that you think would be really helpful to pose to the panelists. If not, I'm happy to throw a question out there.
We had the ones that we prepared. We could run through those.
Yeah. So I'll start with like one of the overarching questions that we had, which was, thinking about Amanda's text in this work, what are maybe not so much pieces of advice, but maybe advice that each of you might give to people who are working with or have somebody in their life who also is struggling with some sort of abuse disorder?
Maybe I'll answer that, just because after the last event and I brought the books back to Herren Wellness, we have been using the books in our parent group. So we facilitate a parent group every Monday, and all the clinicians have the book also in their offices now. And so our parents that have young kids, or even our parents that are in our program for, addiction or something else, and they grew up in an alcoholic home, it kind of works both ways. And it has brought up such great discussion and understanding and ways that they can talk to their kids, and an understanding of how their kids are viewing them. Because so often parents don't, they're usually under the influence during all of this. So they don't feel the kids' angst. They may verbalize it in anger, a kid or a teenager, but they're usually suffering in silence. So this book it's just every group that we've done, and when new guests come in, it's great discussion. So it'll resonate with with really anybody. So,
We always say when we do our programming with the schools, we always encourage kids at the end, if anything has resonated with them, if anything, you know, brings up uh, something in their own life, in their own personal life, whether they feel like they're struggling with a substance or if they have a family member who's struggling with a substance, we always say reach out to a trusted adult. And we direct them specifically to a family member that they can speak to somebody within the schools. We've got great resources in the schools, in the guidance counseling departments, or a church if they attend church. So a trusted adult is somebody that they should feel comfortable reaching out to. And I'm speaking specifically about kids who find themselves in situations that are challenging.
Yeah, I don't know that there's too much for me to add to those great answers. I would just say that sometimes when we see people, they are in stages of hopelessness. And I think what sometimes isn't told to especially children, but to general public and adults as well, that people do get better. And that there are evidence-based treatments for many addictions now that are out there and available. And so I would just say that, like find help, whatever that looks like for you.
I have a follow-up to that question. As I've been presenting this book in a variety of settings, um, what would you say? So, for example, I had a family there, and one of the parents said they haven't really even spoken about, so their family was not directly affected by alcohol use disorder or substance use disorder. So they don't drink. Um, and they said they had never talked about really alcohol before, and they had three kids. Um, I'm getting to the point here, I swear. But their 7 or 8 year old, they just wanted to know like how they were nervous about even bringing it up. Like how do you bring that up to a 7 or 8 year old? Should you be bringing it up if they're seeing someone else's going into another home or someone else's drinking? Like they're going to be around it. So for a parent or family or caregiver who might be nervous to broach this topic with a child, what would you say to them?
gosh, I think that is such, I'm going to answer, I'm going to, just as a parent myself, so I grew up in an alcoholic home. I work in the field. I've been in recovery now for 38 years. So it's a big part of my life. It's probably defined my whole life. So when my kids were growing up, I was just very attuned to what was going on around us. And I would say that even for parent, just because it should be every parent, in my opinion. Like you go to an event, it could be a family event, it could be a friend event, and they're going to see adults under the influence. And I think that addressing that, and my kids, I remember at one point they didn't know moms drank alcohol, like because I'm in recovery, my sisters, so all the aunts were in recovery, and in our neighborhood friend group it was like moms drink wine, like they were, they asked that question because it was new to them, and they would see the moms acting funny or different, or Mr. So and so got really mad. And it was just always, I was very attuned. And if they didn't bring it up, I would bring it up. We were at this, we had a ski house at Loon Mountain every year. And we had a huge, group of friends that we all skied with. And one night they were playing like beer pong. And the parents were like, the kids were all around cheering everybody on. And I took my kids out, and the next day I said, I didn't think that was very appropriate, just saying, like, because the parents got really loud and they're screaming, they got really competitive. And it was funny because one of my kids went up with one of the misters on the chairlift, and he said, my mom said that wasn't very appropriate last night. But because they all know what I do, they were always very careful. But just having that like alcohol and from a young age, alcohol is not always your friend. Like you're going to have friends growing up. You're going to see people that, you know, alcohol doesn't look like it's their friend, and that it's going to be like getting them used to that and seeing that. And then when they're in junior high and people are experimenting, and then in high school, it's constant, you know, safety and like Kristen said, call a friend, call a family member, talking about substances as if it's like we have to provide this education. We can't have the educators. We can't rely on just the school to have an addiction course. You know, I think that parents need to be the educators from a young age, and that can do a lot for prevention. So,
We
personal.
have, oh, sorry, Lori.
Oh, no,
We have a list of conversation starters on our website under our Let's Chat section on our website. Some of them are appropriate for older kids. Some you can definitely bring down into the younger grades. But I would say two things. One is, as a parent, trust your gut about when to have a conversation. I love Laurie's answer because I think people who haven't experienced alcoholism or people who don't work in the field kind of shy away from that subject. And I think we need to be open and honest about that topic with our kids in an age appropriate way. So to the extent that you can bring it up without hitting them over the head with it, you know, making it comfortable, making it natural, because then that's going to extend into other areas of your relationship with them, and they're going to feel comfortable coming to you about other difficult things. Um, but I also think that it's important, just generally speaking, for a parent to have some kind of safety cue with their child. If their child is at a friend's house on a play date and they feel uncomfortable, then there needs to be an opportunity for them to reach out to their parent in a discreet way if they want to, if they feel uncomfortable, whether it's a text message that says, you know, come pick me up, or a text message that says, I'm done, or whatever. Just knowing, letting your child know that you're always available to them if they find themselves in an uncomfortable situation. And lastly, I think it's a really important, starting at a young age. I think we do this anyway as parents. It's just sort of a natural thing to do, to tell our kids to not put certain things in their mouths. You don't put a stone in your mouth. You don't eat sand from the sandbox. You know, stay away from the other stuff that you find on the ground. Um, and that's kind of a precursor to not using substances in a funny way, because you want them to be cautious. You want them to not put things in their bodies that could potentially harm them. And so that's kind of a young introduction to a future conversation about not using substances or not taking something that somebody gives you at a party, at a friend's house, and so on.
I love that.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing. So like the advice I'd give to like an abstainer about how to talk to their kids about it, or the advice I would give is our society romanticizes and glorifies alcohol very publicly.
yeah.
And in the absence to a rebuttal to that, that is what kids will learn because they watch television, they look at or read the internet, however you consume that dang thing, which by the way may be an addiction of itself. But my point is that like children will ultimately have this glorified. And so I think that like we have to come from a place of recognizing that. And to some extent that also relates to drugs. Less so, but it does. And so the idea that a family, while very noble and good, will abstain, the idea that that will somehow protect children from these societal ills it's really sort of a fallacy, honestly.
And because this came up again when I was presenting about the topic, how do you share about it with children while also helping them understand that this won't happen to everyone? Like some people can drink and be okay, and then some people can drink and not be okay. Because I do, after like presenting on this a bit, like I think that that is important for kids to understand too. Like that's not going to happen to every mommy and daddy, like, or mommy and mommy, or daddy and dad, or it's not going to. So like helping them understand the dangers and the risks, but also this is a disorder, and that's, I guess maybe that's more like the medical side of it too, where not everyone might be affected in the same way.
I think there's definitely a limit to what kids can understand,
Yeah.
and it's age dependent. I remember someone that I worked with years ago. He was driving his son to school, and he was drinking out of a water bottle, and his son said, "Dad, no drinking and driving." So he didn't understand. Like kids don't know what alcohol is. It's a little bit too abstract of a concept. They don't know what drunkenness is. They've never experienced it. It's again, it's too abstract. They witness behavior, and they can,
Catch it.
draw some conclusions based on that. But I don't know that they necessarily put two and two together. So it's a great question, Amanda. I think it really runs the gamut depending on the age of the child, honestly. Because I think if you said to Autumn, oh, sometimes when people drink wine, they may act funny. I'm not sure she would totally get that. She's a very bright little girl, don't get me wrong, but I think it's too abstract of a concept. Um, it's a great
Yeah,
question, though. And
it is.
again, I would say for a parent, you kind of have to trust your gut and know your child and know what they're capable of comprehending and hearing from you.
And I think the answer is no one knows who has it. No,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes, I mean, I've heard, you can use the allergy analogy, like some people can't eat peanuts, some people can't,
That's what, yeah.
some people, their bodies, it's different for them. So I think that the answer is, and it's the truth, is no one knows who's gonna get this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anybody can, because if you drink enough, you will become addicted to it. That physiologically, I think, Dr. Krasinski can speak to that, but nobody knows nobody knows. It's like 1 in 8 people count. I do that in 10th grade at the high school. I have people count 1 to 8 or 1 to 10, and then but it could be anybody in the room,
Mm.
genetically, environmentally. And for kids, it's like Kristen said, it's, your own kid, what they might
Mm.
get the allergy part. They might get um, some people have diabetes. Some people have to take medicine every day. Some people, I think some of those things. Doc.
Yeah, for me, this gets at what is addiction versus what is use.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Addiction is used despite negative consequences.
Yep.
And to the extent that kids can understand that, like, you can ride your bike but not break your arm, it's like the same concept, right?
Mm.
They have to, maybe others will correct me, but kids have to see that. They have to feel that. If you don't teach that lesson, then it becomes an all good or all bad,
Mm.
which is dangerous for adolescents, because like all bad when your frontal lobe doesn't work means that you don't trust the person who's telling you that it's all bad, because they do see people who consume drugs and alcohol who they don't think have a problem. So
Right.
therefore
They don't.
right. Your mommy and your daddy are lying to you otherwise. Do you see what I'm getting at? So, but this gets me at one other slightly more subtle point, and then I promise I'll stop talking. That, like, people consume these things, and physical dependence is different from addiction. Now, look, I think most adults have a hard time separating those two phenomenon. So I'm not sure it's an adolescent or child lesson, but it's really hard, I think, to explain to people this concept if you don't grasp it, that like if you take something consistently, your body can be physically needing it. Like caffeine, you get a headache if you don't have it.
Mhm.
But maybe my life is otherwise fine because I drink 4 cups of coffee a day. So I think there are lessons there. When all that gets introduced and how you do it, I think is completely individualized. But the all good, all bad, and if you don't drink or don't, yeah, I use drink in this case. If you don't drink, I think in showing them wherever, like hey, so and so had a few drinks and they're totally fine. They're normal. Whatever normal means is a lesson I think most adolescents need to get probably before they have their first drink.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love what you said to Todd about what kids are consuming through the media, through entertainment with regard to substance use and alcohol use. I can't tell you how many times we watch a Netflix show and we're like, that person could never get up and do that after everything that they just drank. How did they sober up so quickly? It makes no sense. So those are like little opportunities to have a conversation with a child. If a child's in the room watching the show with you, you can say that would never happen. You would feel yucky. You would
Yes.
feel like
Yes.
you had a cold or you had the flu or you were sick and your head would feel crummy. So, yeah, I think just jumping on any and every opportunity to make the case.
Mm.
Yeah.
And the other quick thing is most kids, unless they grow up in a household with someone with an alcohol use disorder, most kids really don't know what that even means.
Right. That's right.
Like, so you are telling them that this can be harmful to people, and they're like, really, I don't see that.
Mm.
So, I think there's an element of also like showing age appropriate children what addiction looks like.
I also think as showing them there is a healthy use of alcohol, so it's and kind of pointing that out, and they start to see like what that really is, if it's like, if we make them aware of it. So like my kids have never seen me drink, but because I was sober when we got married, but my husband is a social drinker, and they know like I don't drink at all, but he's responsible, and so they have a good barometer of when that is really off. They can recognize it, and I think kids feel it, like you said, Todd. I think kids feel it. They can feel it, like they're at a friend's house and somebody's had like they're different. They feel like they're different, and it can be scary, you know?
We
Like
do know from the local youth risk behavior survey, I'm not sure what the nationwide numbers are, but kids definitely start using alcohol in particular at a young age, sixth, seventh grade. And it really gets full blown, like the numbers skyrocket between ninth grade and 10th grade.
yeah,
So if you look at those numbers and you see the trajectory of substance use or alcohol use, it can kind of guide when you as a parent decide to have a conversation. We have kind of drawn the conclusion that when kids get their driver's licenses, that's when they have a lot of freedom. They get out, they do things with their friends, and that's why the use of substances goes up so dramatically between ninth and 10th grade. But certainly, to Dr. Kerensky's point, before your child gets to that age, you really should have some kind of conversation. I grew up in a home where we didn't drink, nobody drank. My relatives didn't drink. There was never alcohol at holidays, nothing. And when I went off to college, I was like, I just didn't know the difference between a beer and a Tanqueray and tonic. So, because nobody had ever had that conversation with me, it obviously didn't seem like it was a priority. Um, and it should have been a conversation that I had had with somebody at some point because I learned the hard way, like a lot of people do. So,
mm,
And I want to come back to two things. Lori, you had mentioned just a minute ago about the nuance between acceptable
mm,
alcohol consumption and then when it becomes a problem. And I'm wondering for you in the recovery space, how do you know when it's a problem? And if you think it's a problem, how can you help that loved one or that person in your life work through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I won't use like a clinical term, but something that was asked to me when I was 26 years old. And that question came from my father, who was in recovery. And he said, when you take the drink, does the drink take you? And it was something very, very simple because all of a sudden it was, I became it became, I didn't have control anymore of when I was going to stop. So I would drink, and even if I had a plan to stop or that I had something to do the next day, I drank, I craved more, and without my own permission, so to speak, under the influence, I didn't have that shut-off valve. So, but I think it really is different for everybody. For me, it was an internal just malaise, and I knew a little bit because of my father's sobriety, but I think a lot of people, I think that a lot of people, they defend it or they don't know or they don't think they have it. But it's negative consequences, continue like negative consequences are happening. It's either, it's, I'll say to a couple, whether you identify as an alcoholic or not, doesn't really matter. If alcohol is causing a problem in the marriage, there's an alcohol problem. There's a drinking problem if it's causing trouble in relationships or work, school, daily living, being able to be present and show up. So it can change. It can be very, people's tolerance changes. It can be it's very different for everybody, I think. But and I asked that for my, I can put it in very simple terms for some of our guests, and saying the word alcoholic is really, it's not a great word, like who wants to be one? So the respect around that, we say struggle, we say, you have a trouble with alcohol, and then we say recovery. We don't say you're an alcoholic. And but if I say like alcohol runs the show, like things like that, they can identify with that. So I think the words are just stigmatizing, and some questions. I just have simple questions like that for. It's a good question. Doc, I want to hear what he has to say.
Your story reminds me so much of something that I say all the time, which is that, the addiction community's gotten away from the term abuse. The
Yeah.
old terms used to be alcohol abuse or substance abuse or whatever. And every time I hear that term now, I internally smile and think to myself, does the person abuse the substance or does the substance abuse the person?
Mm.
And what you said, Lori, is essentially the same thing in different language. And so it's so good that you told that story, but then also went into the part about diction and how words matter. Um, but not to be technical, like people can drink small amounts, but still have an alcohol use disorder based on the criteria. And then you can have other people who drink what you or I might think is a lot, but not have negative consequences. And this is where kids and adults struggle, because not that many people really can define a person with alcohol use disorder, to use first person language.
Right.
Like, what does that mean to a lay person, or frankly, to most doctors? They'd be like, I don't know. I know it when I see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think too, fundamentally, the thing that I love so much about Amanda's book is it's not saying you need to confront this person, you need to do something to help this person change. It's a book that really causes you, as the person on the receiving end of some bad behavior, to reflect inwardly and learn ways to cope. Because there's so much denial that comes with this disease. It's it can be impossible to have a conversation with somebody until they're ready. And Laurie can and Dr. Kerensky can speak to this, you know, very eloquently. Until somebody is ready and admits that they have a problem, you can talk till you're blue in the face, and they'll never come to terms with it. They'll, you know, if they're not sleeping on. I remember my husband saying he went to an AA meeting and he came home and he said, "I'm not homeless sleeping under a bridge. I don't have an alcohol problem." But he did, a very bad one. So until somebody's ready to come to terms with it, there's nothing that you can do to help them, to guide them along. But you do need to work on yourself and your own reactions and your ability to stay strong if you're in a household like that.
Super well said.
Mm.
Very well said.
I think that holds true, especially from the child, like when thinking of my childhood, because I often felt helpless. Like as a child, you feel like there's not much you can do. So what are the things you can do to kind of take something back, or feel like you have some ability to control the situation, I guess, or control your own situation. Yeah.
I will say that most chronic diseases make people feel that way, though.
Mhm.
It's
That's
not
true.
just addiction or mental
Yeah.
health, you know, like people with heart failure, liver problems, people lose control of their bodies in that sense, and it can be very anxiety provoking for families to watch chronic illness.
Mhm. Mm.
That's an
That's a good point.
point, and so good to remember in all this. It is a chronic disease.
Mhm.
Yep.
While we're talking about chronic diseases, I'm gonna flip this into mental health. Um, if there's people listening out there whose children have a mental health disorder like anxiety, depression, are there any statistics or evidence out there that they're even at an even greater risk for um, venturing into trying, risky behaviors or substance use or
Yeah, I think so. I can't.
ACEs. Laura, you taught me about ACEs many, many
Yeah.
years ago.
Yep. Yeah, I think all kinds of anxiety, depression, mental health, all of it. How you learn, how you cope, coping strategies that we learn. Oftentimes substances just take the noise down a level, or there's a stat out there that I forget it's such a high percentage of teenagers that go to sleep at night. They use marijuana to go to sleep at night.
mhm.
I mean, that's like crazy to me. Like they already are depending on something outside themselves to, make them sleep, or, um, yeah, I think that kids that suffer like that definitely, they need coping strategies then, like learn at a young age, how to turn the noise off, or how to soothe themselves, or, um, I think that's really important. I remember when I had twins, um, my first two are twins, and I remember like I made them find their thumbs. Like people are like, you don't let your kids suck their thumbs. Well, with the binkies, I was like, no, I want them to learn how to go, oh, in the crib, and how to soothe themselves like at a young age. And they were fine. They stopped sucking their thumb and all that. But I wanted them to find their own part of themselves that they could, instead of, finding a binky somewhere. So it's just a small example.
We'll start wrapping up for the night, but Todd or Kristen or both of y'all, if you guys wanted to chime in too, towards Amanda's question, we do have time for that really quick.
I guess I'll keep it brief. I think there's an association between mental health and addiction. But the one thing that people get confused is that association is not causation. And when people have both, there is somewhat of a misconception that if I just wasn't depressed or if I just wasn't anxious, then I just wouldn't drink. And half of my job is fighting that line of thinking, because there is no evidence that I'm aware of anywhere in the history of medicine that if you treat depression or anxiety, that it makes the alcohol or drug use disorder go away. They are distinct disorders.
That's a really great point. And I'll just say, unfortunately, there are no predictors. You know, I mentioned ACEs before to Laurie. Laurie was my mentor many years ago. I think I mentioned that the last time we all got together. ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And you, Amanda, are living proof. You suffered an adverse childhood experience, and you're not, to our knowledge anyway, someone who abuses substances. You know, my husband did not suffer adverse childhood experiences, and he ended up an alcoholic. So there's no, you know, we definitely want to look at that potential. Certainly, you know, if children are struggling, we want to make sure that they have extra protections in place to make sure that they don't go down those paths. But I think it's the million-dollar question is, what is the right formula that causes this to happen? And I'm not sure there is a formula.
Awesome. And we'll end on that lingering question. If anyone can solve that, that would be amazing. All right. Well, I want to thank Amanda for coming out and talking to us again and rereading your book for us. Appreciate you and your time and everything, the creative process that went into this, and sharing a little bit of your tidbit of your creative process. And then also, Kristen, Lori, Todd, thank you for coming out for the second round of the panel and being flexible to trying a virtual modality for this. I will definitely send the recording to the guests who RSVP'd for this, and then also to our guest list for the in-person events that we did a couple weeks back too. That way we're getting resources and a really robust, again, conversation out there to people who may be interested in learning more from you guys. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to can I send your contact information
Oh,
or the
absolutely.
organization
Sure.
that you guys are all attached to
Of course.
and the email? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
The more we do this, the more I think it's the precursor to a YouTube channel. But
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. We need to take our show on the
Yeah.
road.
A podcast.
I like being with
If
you.
any-
I love being with all you guys.
yeah, there's
It's
some
like
pretty
the
profound things that this group comes together with. So I think it kind of would be cool. I don't know.
I think it would be very cool.
Let's
And
do
I
it.
just
I'm
love
in.
the fact that we each touch on different areas of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah. So
We'll be in
who's
touch.
who's in charge of that?
Who wants to-
I have a
take that
YouTube
on.
channel.
Oh,
Yeah, Kristen. I
Sure.
put
we'll figure that out for sure. Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Well, we work very closely with Harbor Media, which is the local
Oh,
cable
yes.
access station here in
Yeah.
Hingham. They would love to do something like this.
Yes, they're
Um,
really good up there. They have, yeah. All right.
yeah, we were doing our podcast with them. So
Sounds good. My agent will be in contact with you.
I did put those. I love the conversation starters you had on the website, Kristen. I stuck that link in the email, Alyssa, if you want to include that in there when you send it out to everybody. I think that's great. And if you're okay with it, Kristen, I might put it on my website.
Absolutely.
Is that okay?
Yes,
Okay.
please
Spread the
steal
word.
away.
If anyone else, I think I might have Herren Wellness. Todd, I wouldn't know what link to put on there. Like, do I put straight South Shore Health, or because I have a resources
I'll send it to
Very-
you.
Okay.
I also introduced you to a couple other people at South Shore that we can help get you over here. So
Beautiful.
Awesome.
I'll email you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for being here, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Well,
Well,
thank you, Amanda.
this was a fascinating conversation to listen in on.
Mm.
You know, like I didn't really have any questions, mostly because I never experienced what Amanda experienced. And so but as a friend and as a fellow writer, when she told me that tonight's event was happening, and I've been meaning to come to one of her events for the new book, I just figured it was a good opportunity to do so. And I really enjoyed this. So thank you all for taking the time to talk about to talk about this because it needs to be talked about more often.
Mhm.
Thank you.
It does.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for
Great.
joining, Sarah.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Yes.
everyone. Good to see you
Great to have
guys.
you.
Good to see you. We'll all
You
be in
too.
touch.
Yeah,
Right.
enjoy your holiday season, everybody. Whatever
You
you
too.
celebrate.
Thank you so much for organizing, Alyssa, and thanks for your great work, Amanda.
Thank you.
All
All
right.
right, bye,
Bye.
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.